My name is Deacon Adam Pantaleo, and I will be ordained for the Archdiocese of Toronto. I'm really happy to share my story with you this evening, and the first thing I'd like to say is that in many ways I think my story is a little bit boring, even uneventful. And the reason I share that is because God never spoke to me dramatically with this lightning bolt eureka moment. Rather, it was very soft, very gradual over many, many years, and that's ultimately how I discovered that He was calling me to be a priest. So I'll begin my story in my childhood. And I think it's important to say that when I was younger, me and my family, we never really practiced our Catholic faith. I went to Catholic school growing up, but I never really went to Mass with my family or even on my own. Never really prayed and never really talked to God that much as I was growing up. Nevertheless, if I look back in hindsight, I can recognize, and it's kind of strange or kind of hard to describe, but I was always curious about the church, even from a really young age. There's always something in my heart that was drawing me to God and to the church. And it took me many, many years to put that into words and to realize what was going on in my heart. But to make a long story short, I basically came to a point near the end of high school when I realized that I needed to do something about this curiosity that was in my heart. And so I decided one day, sort of out of the blue, to go to Mass at my home parish in Mississauga. And shortly after, I decided to keep coming back, and I slowly made it a habit. First, I went on my own. Later, my family started coming with me, but that was really the moment, the first time in my life when I started to practice my Catholic faith. And I mention that just because I've realized in my own reflections that if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here today, right? If I never started praying, never started practicing my faith, I never would have been able to hear God's voice. I never would have known that He was calling me to be a priest. So that's really part one of my vocation story. Part two happened in university. So I kept on practicing my faith through my university years, even though it took a little bit of a back seat. Something else was on my mind, basically. And this is going to sound a bit nerdy, but science was on my mind. Chemistry was on my mind. So those that know me well know that I'm kind of a huge science nerd. I always have been, and I still am today. I think science is fascinating. And I studied chemistry at McMaster University and basically had a dream to be a chemistry professor. That's what I wanted to do, work in a lab, teach others chemistry, and I followed that career path for many, many years, even going to grad school at U of T to do my master's degree once I was done at McMaster. And I followed this path, like I said, for many years until two things happened to me roughly at the same time as I was wrapping up my university studies. The first thing is that I started to get more involved in the church. I had another desire on my heart to stop hiding my faith from others. I wanted to live it out more fully. And so, for example, I started altar serving at my home parish in Mississauga. I discovered the Newman Centre at the University of Toronto and got involved in their ministries there. I was a Totus Tuus missionary, which was a really amazing experience for me to be able to spread the faith to others. And to make another really long story short, I came to a very startling discovery. I realized, to my surprise, that I loved ministry and I loved the church more than I did the chemistry lab. And for a science nerd like me, that blew my mind. I never expected I would say that out loud. So that's the first thing that happened. The second thing, at the same time, that's when I first started to hear in my heart this very gradual, very soft sense that God might be calling me to be a priest. And like I said, there was never a eureka moment. It was incredibly gradual. It scared me at first. I ignored it for many months, but I came to a point when I realized I needed to look into this more. And so as I transitioned out of university and realized I wasn't going to be a professor, I started to pray more about the priesthood, share what was on my heart with the priests at my parish and friends that I trusted. And eventually, after a few years of discernment, I went from being afraid to being at peace with this idea of going to seminary and perhaps being a priest one day. And so in 2015, I applied to St. Augustine Seminary. And believe it or not, that was 7 years ago. And there's been a lot of ups and downs in between, but here I am. I was ordained a transitional deacon back in September of 2021, and I'm very much looking forward to my priestly ordination coming up in just a few months. I'm really excited to begin my ministry in the Archdiocese.